And we continue with Africa World Hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just concluded a high-profile visit to Israel, becoming the first Indian leader to address the Knesset. In a speech heavy with symbolism and strategy, Modi declared that India stands firmly with Israel, he said, condemning the October 7 attacks backed by the UN-endorsed Gaza Peace Initiative, and signaled deeper defense and technology cooperation, including potential for co-development of advanced missile systems. But what does this visit really mean? Is this solidarity in a moment of crisis or the shaping of a new geopolitical alignment? To unpack it all, we're joined by international political scientist Amir Bagherioromi. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening to you, your listeners and viewers.
And thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And please do correct my pronunciation. Let's just first start with, it's been called an historic first, and I'd like to hear from you why. An Indian Prime Minister addressing the Knesset, yes, fine, but symbolically and strategically, just how significant is this moment?
Yeah, I would say for India, it is relatively historic. For Israel, however, I would say it's a lot more symbolic than a strategical, transformation. The defense relationships already existed between Israel and India. So the real significance for Israel here are the diplomatic optics. I think Israel, as we know, is accused of genocide in Gaza. Many countries are hesitant to publicly associate themselves with it. So when the leader of the world's largest democracy in terms of population, stands in Knesset, it functions as a diplomatic whitewashing. So it sends a message that, Israel is not necessarily isolated. However, for India, it can be regarded as historic because there are quite a few benefits, defense technology, military systems, intelligence cooperation. And ideologically, we can also argue that, the two countries are relatively aligned. When you look at Zionism and Hindu nationalism, they both center around majority identity at the cost of minority. So both frame minorities as demographics or generally security challenges, and both do justify scrutinization in the name of national interest. So it's not just a diplomatic moment; it's also an ideological theater.
And that is the question, the ideological. And I'm going to separate the word theatre because that also needs to be unpacked. We've seen India move in the manner that has with the United States recently when it agreed to not buy from China it had to do with Brent crude oil, and I think it was an agreement with China. So is it moving away from what would be termed the non-alignedness of the BRICS countries and their ideology?
Right. I mean, it could definitely be looked in that lens as well. We are living in an extremely polarized world, and we are talking in an era where mass majority of world leaders are referring to the current geopolitics that we are all living in as the emergence of the new world order. So with this new emergence, many countries, not just India, are going to start looking for new superpower friends or allies, or they're going to spend or invest rather more into creating new relationships with other countries and allies that can potentially collectively as a force make them stronger in terms of defense, economy, politics, diplomacy, and so forth. So it can certainly be viewed in that perspective.
So let's talk about the visits itself. What material difference is there going to be a real shift in India-Israel relations, and are we going to see a consolidation of a trajectory of? Is it a trajectory that is well underway or kick-starting? Because, as you mentioned, there is the optics, but when it gets down to the minutiae of a policy shift, is that going to be something they're going to see immediately?
Yeah, I think, if I had to share my opinion with you, for me, it would be a consolidation. The shift happened years ago between India and Israel. We know that India is one of Israel's largest arms buyers. We know that intelligence and defense cooperation had been deepened steadily over the years. Voting patterns in international forums like United Nations have softened towards Israel from India's, behalf. And what is new here really is the openness of it. The hesitation is gone. So, when you look at the Israel war on Hamas and the broader assault on Gaza civilian population, Indian migrant workers were brought in to replace the Palestinian labor that was expelled, right? So it's beyond the political. It's also more in terms of trade, economy, and migration because of labor. So it's not only symbolic, it's also a structural interrogation at an international level. And this visit really just formalizes what has already been happening quietly, but more now in a public arena.
So, from a moral perspective, for those who would be against this, I mean, Modi was unequivocal in his condemnation of the October 7 attacks, reiterating what he said is a zero tolerance for terrorism. So, from a security calculus, as you mentioned, the two sides have signaled deeper defense technology cooperation. But there's been an outcry on what is happening in Gaza. It has been, even by the UN Security Council, labeled genocidal, the acts of Israel. So, how does India then balance its relations with other countries who hold a very strong position on this? South Africa, for instance, is one of those.
Yeah, your question started with is it a value-based cooperation? From a human rights perspective, it's not a value-based, cooperation. And if we apply values consistently, we condemn all civilian killings, not necessarily the selective ones that Israel is talking about. And the attack that happened on October the 7th. However, if the value being referenced are majoritarian nationalism, a civilizational entitlement, and strong state dominance, then we can say, yeah, it is ideological value-based alignment. Both political movements in Israel and in India prioritize majority identity. They do frame dissent as a threat, and they normalize exceptional security measures that go way beyond, ideology, belief, and political alignment. So it is a strategic calculus for Israel and India. I think in this emerging multipolar order that I mentioned, states are reducing their dependency on superpowers. So for relations like this to emerge is something that we are going to have to get used to again, not only by India but by many other countries in the coming months and years. And yeah, this relationship, I think, lubricates their relationship as far as their ideologies are concerned.
Now, I'm going to lean on the term lubricate and say, how fluid does it make the so-called diplomatic dual tracking sustainable for India? Because Modi expressed support for the UN-endorsed Gaza Peace Initiative, but will he be able to stand firmly with Israel when that backing of a broader peace framework becomes untenable?
Yeah, look, it is like regional politics working on reaction. I think if India deepens this tie with Israel, potentially Pakistan can strengthen its ties with the likes of China or the likes of Iran on deepening security cooperations. Mind you, we must also remember that just like India and Israel, Pakistan is a nuclear power too. So this could cause further tensions in the region as well. It's going to lead to regional imbalance and the constant act of counterbalancing by all the countries countries in Middle East and Central and Southern Asia as well. There are also consequences, I think, from a BRICS dimension point of view. We know, like South Africa, several BRICS members have already, strained their relations with Israel ever since they've been accused of genocide. And the potential Israeli proximity with India may create internal tensions at the BRICS bloc. So it's not just like a bilateral relationship that will have effects only on the two countries. It could potentially have a systematic ripple effect in the coming years.
So beyond trying to be a bridge, is the bigger significant prize being cooperation in AI, semiconductors and quantum technology, the innovation ecosystem for India and Israel?
Yes, I think this is the long game. Defense is the short-term power, really. Technological ecosystems are the generational power of the future. We know that Israel is extremely high innovation, is extremely high when it comes to innovation intensity. We also know that they have great cybersecurity and AI expertise, which doesn't always operate from an ethical point of view, but they strengthen that aspect is unquestionable. On the other hand, when you look at India, India definitely has the scale in terms of workforce and labor price. At the same time, India has engineering workforce and it is constantly expanding its digital economy. So if this relationship from an AI and technological, point of view are integrated meaningfully, this could reshape both these economies. I think technological sovereignty is the currency of the next global order. We already know the revolution that blockchains and cryptocurrencies are shifting in today's world, and that might ultimately matter more than any single weapon deal between the two countries.
Well, we thank you for your time and your insights, Amir Bagherioromi, who is speaking to us about the recent visit made by India's Prime Minister to Israel, and just how much of a landmark event it is in consolidating the relationship, the cooperation between the two countries. Brings the time now to 25 minutes to 10.
Sheila Ndikumana.